Today we're going to talk about the Tumblr animation Kickstarter that almost ruined its creator's life. After raising a whopping sum of $8,000 but potentially failing to deliver due to overwhelming circumstances we're going to discuss later on in this video, and then eventually spiraling downwards and disappointing the massive crowd who had backed the project and had huge expectations towards it. Whenever there's a good cause that excites everyone and has people eagerly supporting it, there usually is a criminally minded person close by pulling the strings and scheming behind closed doors, waiting patiently to manipulate people and make them part with their hard-earned money. This is the story of Mrs. Officer and Mr. Truffles, a project that was started with so much goodwill and supposedly had potential of becoming a smash hit cartoon series according to almost every Tumblr user back in 2014. But how did this well-meaning little comic strip that started out so well end up flopping and becoming the face of every Tumblr scam tier list and almost ruin the life of its creator? Allow me to take you all the way back in time to the very beginning. And if you're new to this channel and love listening to art commentary style videos or just videos talking about things happening within the art community, please subscribe to the channel and join the Discord server using the link in the description. It all started way back in 2011 when this photo of Canadian police officer Suzanne Bogg being approached by a tiny bear cub was published in the Canadian newspaper The Telegram with a headline that said, "Bear cub meets sad end," and in the photograph the officer is shown using her cell phone while the bear looked at her as if he was trying to find out who she was texting while they were talking to each other. Kinda like how most guys do on a date. Apparently it had been reported that the bear had been approaching people at a restaurant close by, and the officer came down to the national park to interview people asking them about the sightings. The story in the newspaper sadly stated that the bear cub had been put down, but a couple of years later the officer reported that it was another different cub that was put down and not the one in the photo. So it's either there were two identical bear cubs walking around and approaching people, or she just had to say that to save face after the entire thing went viral. But then again, who knows? It's Canada. I believe it's pretty common to see bears just walking around and doing cool stuff, I presume. If I'm wrong, you can correct me in the comments because there's a slim chance that I kinda don't know anything about bears or Canada and I'm just winging it. After the sad incident with the bear back in 2011, it wasn't until late 2012 the photo of the officer and the bear would find its way onto Tumblr when a Tumblr user posted the image with a caption that said, "Officer, come quick, there's been a robbery," to which two other people replied saying, "Don't you mean a robbery? That is the cutest police officer and bear I have ever seen. Look at them. They're so adorable." But the comment that gave birth to this whole idea and ended up creating a rabbit hole so massive that Alice wouldn't have to tumble down into was this Tumblr user who said, "This will be a great cartoon, like this RCMP lady and a bear just going around solving crimes and mysteries and helping folks out." Post made its way around Tumblr, but it wasn't until an artist saw it and decided to make actual fan art of what the cartoon will hypothetically look like did it finally go viral. And boy did she cook. Meet Lemon Tea Flower, a really amazing artist who at that time was only around 18 years old but was filled with big dreams of working in the animation industry and creating their own show, which finally was about to come true with the sudden popularity of their comic strip of the police officer and the bear cub, and they called it Mrs. Officer and Mr. Truffle. The post got a massive response from the Tumblr art community and people seemed to really like the idea of the characters being animated, and they were surprised with how good the image looked for a mock-up of a show. The post garnered over 170,000 notes on Tumblr, and Lemon Tea followed up with more concept sketches, further building the feel of what their headcanon of the meme would look like if it were to be made into an actual show. And the crowd went absolutely wild and were loving every bit of art that was thrown at them, with the new drawings gaining over 200,000 notes together with the first concept, and everyone on Tumblr just going crazy for the imaginary show. These drawings sparked the idea that if one person could just sit down and actually make something, the community could potentially come together and make it a reality, especially since it seemed to have so much potential and could really end up being a good show. Other artists also became inspired by the art and the story, and a truckload of fan art started piling piling up from different artists around the world, all helping out one way or another and sharing the art across Tumblr and DeviantArt. Some animators also joined in and made a little animatic and also a theme song, and while the original has since been taken down, we still can see this one, which for what it is still a pretty decent animatic, even if it was for a fake animated show. The surprising thing about most of this is, as much as everyone was just drawing the characters based off of the head canons from Lemon Tea, most of the art and animation was really good, and some people even began comparing it with actual cartoons and TV shows, saying it could stand on par with similar shows that had the same style. And as much as people ended up hating Lemon Tea Flower for everything that had happened, we can't deny the art and everything about the show just looked really good. I think it had good looking art and would have probably managed to make a half decent show if the odds were in their favor. After all the drawings and fan art made their way around Tumblr, it somehow managed to catch the attention of the police officer herself, and she made a Tumblr account where she posted a selfie with one of the drawings as her desktop background, with a caption that said, "Loving my new desktop art, care of Lemon Tea Flower. Woohoo! I'll probably start rotating the clips every other week or month, but I could always use more though. That will be awesome. Peace out." The fact that the actual cop somehow got wind of the drawings after they were going viral on Tumblr is just mind-blowing, and it just goes to show you how much power the internet has and just how fast things could potentially explode and go viral on social media. Even for today's standards, I can't lie, that is really impressive. Lemon Tea Flower really did cook. After the drawings had gone viral and it was certain the internet was begging for Mrs. Officer and Mr. Truffles to become a real show, saying things like a friendly reminder this is a show and this isn't, and there was so much fan art of the characters, it was apparently time for them to make it a real thing. Now there are 3 crucial steps to creating a Kickstarter campaign from a meme. Whether it's successful or not is pretty much up to you. I'm only here to inform you and entertain you a little bit along the way, so follow along and let's learn from this Kickstarter. Step 1. Build yourself a team. It's obvious that doing something alone sucks. Eating alone sucks. Go put on some YouTube and entertain yourself. Going to the gym alone sucks. Go make some new friends. Drawing alone sucks. But then again, you can't just go around showing everyone your drawings because they're bad and they'll just laugh at you. So I'm assuming at this point you should understand that basically you need a team or a small group of people or friends, which is basically a team, I guess. You get the point. And that is precisely what they did. They made a team of people who were also Tumblr users at that time to handle the Kickstarter campaign side of things. I believe they reached out to Lemon Tea and asked if they were interested in making Mrs. Officer a thing, and then they put the Kickstarter up and started hiring artists, animators, and even producers. Basically, they were trying to make an entire animation crew to properly make this a thing, and it seemed to be going pretty well for the most part. People were even sending in samples of their work and submitting animations, and the team even created a separate Tumblr page for the campaign where they kept the fans up to date with what was happening with the project and teased a few images and concept art to keep the hype up. Step 2. Ask for a ridiculous amount of money. Now this happens to be the most important part, because if you don't ask for a ridiculous amount of money, who is ever going to take your little community funded project seriously? So the crew asked for a whopping sum of $80,000 for the Kickstarter, and comparing that to the budget it takes to make actual animated shows, it seemed kinda reasonable and was around the same ballpark. Their goal was to create a pilot episode that will be 7 minutes long, and if it was greenlit, they would eventually turn Mrs. Officer and Mr. Truffles into a full series. They also wanted to provide representation for people of color and LGBTQ+, and looking back at it now, it kinda reminds me of a show that had similar goals but didn't end up doing so well at expressing them to its audience. Some people still wondered why the goal of the project was so big and what they really intended to do with all that money, so they provided us with a pie chart that showed how much each of the elements of the production was going to cost. Animation, art, music, and voice actors I can understand, but merchandise? Why is there so much money being allocated to merchandise? And like, aren't all the other elements listed above all still part of production costs? How come it's still classified separately? I I'm so confused. The production budget pays for things like product licenses. Did you know that Toon Boom costs $700 per license? We need to purchase these tools and other resources like this so that all of our animators have access to the same material. This will be much less costly for an animation studio since they will already have a bank of licensed computers. Anything not used in the production fund will be repurposed to hire additional staff. Oh. Okay. The merchandise budget covers the base cost of the physical items for every reward tier. It's likely an overestimate as we have no way of knowing what the demand for these items will be until they're pledged. We don't make additional funds off of this. Any extra finances left over in this department are also repurposed to pay or increase our staff. These budget sections seem big because the payments to all of our staff, including the creators whom have been working since January for free, are very low. Isn't that how you usually create passion projects? I mean, no one is just going to pay you because you're making a passion project which you pretty much created by yourself. So of course you're going to be working for free, right? I'm assuming they really had no idea how animation works because Lemon Tea mentioned that the people who were supposedly handling the Kickstarter literally took charge of the entire project and basically used Lemon Tea as the face of the project, which is also quite sad because when it eventually fell apart, everything just came pointing back to Lemon Tea alone. During the short period when the Kickstarter was live, it was able to raise almost $10,000 and was on track to hitting their goal if all the promises were met and the project was handled properly with an organized structure and careful planning. But sometimes when things go viral in a short period of time and you're faced with such a huge project to manage and a team of people to handle and account for, things can immediately begin to get overwhelming, and slowly what started as a well-meaning endeavor can immediately get out of hand pretty fast, which was sadly the case of Mrs. Officer and Mr. Truffles. Fans immediately started calling the Kickstarter out for asking for an insanely ridiculous amount of money and not properly explaining where the money was going to or what they intended to do with it. And even after sharing the pie chart and their goals in the description of the Kickstarter, fans still felt it was ludicrous and began calling the Kickstarter a scam and saying it sucked horribly. Call-outs and accusations were thrown at both Lemon Tea Flower and the Kickstarter, with a former animator accusing the team of bullying and overworking the artists but then underpaying them for their effort, and claiming they hired artists and animators to work on the project so they could ask for more money from their supporters, when in reality, that wasn't the case. A bunch of my friends used to work for this project, and I emphasized used to because the people working on the project bullied one out of working, made another quit due to their hypocritical and disgusting work ethic, and is withholding and refusing payment for the work they've done, which is a lot. They've even sent a termination letter that was basically a personal attack on my friend and threatened that if they said anything slanderous, they wouldn't get paid. They also went on to explain how the other artists were treated poorly during and even after working on the project, and how the creators of the project were lying about it just so people could support the project and fulfill the reward. Another issue people had with the project stemmed from the username Lemon Tea was using in the past for their social media handles, which was rather offensive and was termed as a homophobic slur. Lemon Tea had since made an apology for the username and changed it across their social media handles, but people still couldn't get over the fact that Lemon Tea had used that username and questioned the authenticity of the project and if they should even bother supporting it. People on different forums on the internet still talk about Miss Officer and Mr. Truffles, and while some people keep on hating on the entire thing, calling it a big mess, some people still respect the artists and understand it wasn't entirely their fault. The fact people remember Miss Officer and Mr. Truffles and many other Kickstarter troubles to this day is a lesson in itself for aspiring creators. Honestly, if you're planning to make something relying on a Kickstarter or anything like that, learn from their mistakes. In hindsight, yikes, the whole Miss Officer and Mr. Truffles thing should have been handled differently, and a lot of us owe them an apology. It was a sketchy Kickstarter, but if it happened today and I had the same problems with it, I wouldn't respond at all in the same way. I know that if I had had my animation project actively campaigned against at 18 years old, it would have crushed me. 18-year-olds are still just kids. For an 18-year-old, I would say Lemon Tea Flower did their best to handle the situation as they could. And while almost everyone who would have been in that situation would have folded under pressure, they were still able to acknowledge their mistakes and speak openly regarding the issues the project faced, and apologize to most of the fans who supported the project. And while most people continue calling it one of the biggest Tumblr scams of all time, it technically wasn't really a scam since the project never got funded and the people who backed the project didn't lose any money at all. The only person who lost money was Lemon Tea, who had actually invested part of their money into paying some of the people that worked on the project alongside them. That's really unfortunate because I actually really like the look of this Kickstarter, though I agree that designating a full quarter of your expenses to merch is wasteful to say the least. This isn't a shitty Kickstarter. It's just unrealistic and lacks humility. It's nowhere near as bad as the fraudulent, shambolic, I want to make a social network like Facebook, but you know, cooler. The project eventually never fully got funded, leading to its cancellation and leaving Tumblr and the rest of the internet with a big mess of a drama and a huge dent on Lemon Tea Flower's reputation. But since then, everyone has moved on. Lemon Tea has gone on into working full-time in animation and has achieved their dreams of being an artist working on shows in the animation industry. Although Mrs. Officer and Mr. Truffles ended up as a disaster, we can only wonder if it would have lived up to the expectations everyone had for it if it was properly managed and handled by the right people. But sadly, that's something left for our imaginations, and now it only serves as a lesson for any Kickstarter in the future. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, share the video with a friend, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. With all that being said, I'll see all you pretty penguins in the next video. Bye.